All right, so back at it here in the studio. I am going to uh, walk through the process of applying um, the uh, skills of linear perspective and sight measure, sight size to getting things laid out correctly in this very simple three object still life. So, a couple of things to note about what I've got going on here. I've set this up, stacked this little grouping of objects so that they're parallel with each other along these edges, and that this cup, the cup is sitting off on the that diagonal axis there. And I've pointed this front edge toward myself, which is going to make it kind of, it's going to give me some good clues about how to begin laying this out in on my drawing sheet. So I've given myself a few tricks to make this a little bit easier to lay out. Um, and so what I want to do first, well, let's go through this list of stuff. I need to sight measure this. What I need to do when I'm sitting down and beginning to investigate this grouping of objects is to look at the height to width ratio of the overall grouping of objects, and then create in my drawing space here a little bit of an envelope or guide to how big that is overall going to set within the picture frame, the amount of space I've got to draw on. And so this is, so I'm going to do my sight measure bit, straightening my arm out, lining the top up and the bottom with my fingers, etc., and then getting a good idea. And this is really good to do when you're first looking at a grouping of objects, or more specifically and more advantageously, when you're looking at a complex set of objects, or a figure, a human figure, maybe that is foreshortened. Foreshortening can be very deceptive. And so if you take a few minutes before you begin drawing and line stuff up, get a good idea of height to width and where everything is laid out, you're going to give yourself the advantage of being much more efficient in your drawing. So and now I'm going to lay this out on my drawing paper. What I've found is that this drawing setup, from my vantage point, is relatively square. It is not either higher than it is tall, or wider than it is tall, or taller than it is wide. It's a square. So this little preparatory map structure that I'm creating here is going to help me lay that all out. So I'm going to make a square, make sure that I've got this laid out here. Boom. Roughly speaking, right? We're not creating Tesla's next or SpaceX's next fire capsule to go and land on Mars. We're creating a drawing. So I want to use this as a guide for my intuition, not as a substitute for an AutoCAD program. So here's roughly my square that I'm looking at. So I've got my height to width. I've got this sort of what I'm going to call an envelope shape that my still life is going to set in. Now, there's many ways to get started on this. One is that I'm going to use is to find in this where this front corner is. And that front corner, because I set this up like this, and is what you get when you get to set up your own still lifes. That front corner is located right here in the middle of this. It's running right down the center. The next thing I want to do is to figure out how high this is from here to here. Once I locate that on here, then I can begin to discern these line directions and lay out the rest of that box. But I really first, this is close to me, so I need to site measure that. There's like 4.5 of these. So see if my guess was right. 2, 3, 4. Nope, it's a little bit big. 4.5. 2. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. Okay, so I'm just going to say that this is right here. Now I need to get this line direction. So I've got this cutting mat out awesomely enough that's given me an idea from my vantage point of some horizontal lines. And so off of that front corner, that direction is really close to, it's not a 45. It's right about in here. Whoa. Made that a little too extreme, I think. Site measure. Actually, so these lines here, my measurements, that is about the center, just under the center of the drawing. Outline direction. So as I'm building this, the rules of perspective are that these two are going to go back into a vanishing point somewhere back here. They're way off my page. These two are going to go back into this opposite vanishing point somewhere in my page. That's what the theory tells me, right? And this back corner is also going to go to that same vanishing point. So I need, as I'm drawing this line here, I need to pay attention to how that is relating there. If I draw it up like that, that's definitely not going, they're going away from each other in space. So that's wrong. That's going to just sense wrong. That was almost hard to look at. This is going to go back to this vanishing point somewhere back in space back here. So these all go back to that same vanishing point. So I'm just going to draw them through. Like that. Even though I can't see it, that's where that theory is going to help me out, placing it. My goodness. Hand's not cooperating today. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so now I'm going to locate this corner right here. So I'm going to measure this and see how far that is up to there. And from that same site measure that I did. And what I'm finding is this length and that length are the same. So the front corner of that is right here. And I know, according to my perspective theory, that that line, and the back corner line, and that line, those are all going to be going to the same vanishing point back here. So as I'm drawing this, I'm going to pay attention to how it relates with that and with that. The same thing here, this front edge right here. That's got to relate to here and here. Give myself a little bit more room there. There we go, that's a little tiny bit better. Okay, don't need these anymore. Now, from my vantage point, there is just barely the thickness of this wood panel right there. That just barely hiccups up off of here. Draw in the front plane of this. And give myself an indication of these line directions right here. I can see a little bit of the structure underneath there. That's, oh my gosh, yikes, there it comes. Allergies, okay. And that is getting me the gist of it. Up and through the center of that line is the center of this teacup, pardon me. What I need to look at is where to locate the center of this height right here. And I'm going to compare that again to this length here. I'm going to go back to my standard. And it is about 2/3. So it's about this much. So the front of that cup is right about in here. So I know that. And I also know that it's the same distance here because I put the center, that cup right in the middle there. So relationship to those. It's right in here. So the base will set here. Whoa, that's not the same. This is the same. There we go. So I know the bottom of this ellipse, this circle, this turning, I'm just going to sketch it in real quick here. Happens right there. And then that cup comes up something like that, but not like that. Okay. I find the more information I have down here, the more accurate my drawing is going to be. So when I start to see more relationships, I'll adjust others according to what I have. Again, I am not an AutoCAD program. That's what AutoCAD's for. All right, so this handle comes up and curves around roughly like that. And somehow my measurement has gotten a little bit off, but that's okay. I need to discern, I need for this opening here to read in the same plane shifts that are happening here. And so by that I mean I can't show too much of, if I show too much of a circle here like that, then that cup looks wonky. It's as if I'm existing in an astral plane looking down and in a physical plane looking this way at the same time, which is only possible in dream time. It's a device the surrealists would mess around with, is shifting perspectives. But I don't want to do that right now. We can play around with that later. What I want to do right now is to get the ellipse, this ellipse shape, the right distance from here to the other opening. And from my measurements, it's about a third. So a third of this total distance, 1, 2, 3, about a third of that total distance is how open this ellipse should be. What I need to also make sure of is that in my line that goes up and through the center of that, this and this are equal distance. So one side of the cup's not wider than the other, and that this from here to here is a little bit bigger than from here to here. Now this is kind of subtle, and there are ways to figure it out specifically, but just in theory, this half is closer than this half. So just like we had the X's on those house shapes to find that center, if you imagine this existing in that, you could put an X in there and have that be a little bit bigger in the front. I'll exaggerate it just a little bit because I can. And it'll help this feel even more real. So I'll leave this point in the middle here. The other things that I need to do for this ellipse, this has to turn here. That has to turn correctly, and this one has to reflect that turning. So I'll spend some time doing that. If I flatten this out too much, like an almond, see how that looks like somebody pinched their cup in ceramics class, where it has a little spout coming out of it. Don't want that. So there's a turn here. And at the bottom of this, I've drawn my cup a little short and squat for what it is actually observationally. So next time I sat down and drew this, I would be more mindful of the width to height ratio, because this is not quite correct. But it's correct enough that my viewers, if I'm putting this still life up as a painting, my viewers aren't going to know. They'll have no idea. If I follow the rules enough and make it believable, they'll have no idea that I'm lying about what I'm seeing. Now, if you're going into medical illustration or something like that, you need to be a bit more accurate. Or technical drafting. A bit more accuracy is noted there. But for now, we're just creating believable spaces. Applying theory to reality. Now I could spend a bunch of time with this, and I probably will, just dorking around with this drawing. Maybe do some hatching and cross hatching. And the back of the table there. Get rid of that envelope. And boom, we have a believable space. I like to keep some of these construction lines here just because they're fun. Let me give it some flash and movement. I'm definitely not quite happy with the way that this cup is sitting. That's a little bit better. But I think that probably gives you the idea of how to lay this out, apply theory to practice, and use it anyway to diagnose when things aren't looking right and perhaps how to fix them. All right, so there you go. Have fun drawing, as always, and the more you do it, the better you get. Play, play, play. Have a great one.